Good afternoon and welcome to Beholden To Truth. It is your humble host Joshua here with you guys on a special holiday edition of our happy hour. Happy July 4th, Independence Day to you guys. As usual, I'm outside of the gym sipping some pre-workout. Hold on, normally I reach for my bottle of pre-workout, but special guest appearance, boom, check that out. Officially in hand now. It arrived last night, the whole supplement line. I got one of everything of the anti-Zionist occupation supplement line by yours truly. Purchase it down below in the store. Pre-workout, creatine, multivitamin, fish oil, sleep supplements, the whole line. So super duper excited to have that finally in hand. And also, this is not just some generic tank top, okay? I don't know if you guys can see this. We got the anti-Zog occupation swag going on. We're about to red pill the entire gym. I'm going to walk in there and everybody's going to be like, is that what I think it is? I mean, everybody's talking about Zionism. I've heard about how they are infiltrating and operating within our government and have been for a long time. Is that what the Zog is? And that'll be my time to shine. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But, you know, it's just going to be a way of spreading the public consciousness. People coming together who know what's going on. Because if you've heard of the Zog, if you know what it is, and you see somebody out in publicly announcing that they also know what the Zog is, you're just immediately friends with those people. They know what's up. So I'm looking forward to being able to sport the apparel everywhere I go. I got like pretty much the entire line: hoodies, tank tops, sleeveless shirt, joggers, t-shirts. I ordered one of everything for myself. So I'm doing my part to get the message out there publicly. Also doing the evangelization, obviously, with this platform on social media. I'm talking to my family about it. Anybody who will listen, okay? That's where we got to be. We spread the seeds. Some places they grow. Some places people get a little angry and they call us anti-Semitic, whatever. That's all fine. It's all part of the game. So anyways, it is July 4th, Independence Day, which I've been thinking about it all week, Independence Day. And I think nowadays we should start calling this Re-Independent Day. We need to gain our independence again. We should be celebrating our re-independence. At one point, we established independence and sovereignty from Britain, but we lost our independence somewhere around a little over 100 years ago, early 20th century, right around the Federal Reserve, the creation of all of these three-letter agencies, the infiltration of the intelligence network, all of that. We have long since lost sovereignty. We don't actually decide who our politicians are. We don't have control over our own currency. We don't get to decide what wars we go into. We don't get to decide what's taught in our public schools. You know, like to actually think that the people run this country at this point is hopelessly naive. And so we need to have a renaissance. We need to have a reclamation of our independence. You know, I was thinking about that movie Independence Day. I've been thinking about all this stuff all week. You know, I loved that movie as a kid. I had the VHS tape. And the more I think about it, the more I see just how comical it all is. And how you can trace back the ideological subversion in this country when it comes to multiculturalism. You know, of course, they have to cast the black hero who goes and saves not just America, but all of the human race. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith. We are so grateful for his courage and patriotism saving the human race, which he would then go on to do over and over again in all the other Hollywood films he starred in. Then that's just like that one movie. I just started thinking about all the other Hollywood propaganda we were fed subconsciously to erase this idea that there is something unique about white European civilization, that other people can come in, replicate it, carry it forward into the next generation. when I just reflect on the television shows in my childhood and even predating my own childhood, you had these sitcoms that normalized portraying the black community, black people, as if they live the exact same style of life. They have the same cultural ideals, the same ways of seeing the world, the same ways as seeing this country as white people. And this goes all the way back to, you have, what was it, Good Times, you had The Cosby Show. There was that other third one that was really big. Obviously, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air comes around in the 90s, and they cast these black families as if they look the exact same as the white family next door, right? And we all know that that's just not true. And I'm not trying to say that that's not true in any black households, obviously. We're talking about at a group level. Black households don't look like The Cosby Show. Black households don't look like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So, Family Matters is another big one. It was Cosby Show, Good Times, I think was the name of that show, and Family Matters, and then you have Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it's just like, when you look back on it as an older person who understands the forceful indoctrination of multiculturalism, you start to see how all these things add up. You start to see more and more black protagonists. You start to see more multicultural cast, even in shows like Saved by the Bell. And then eventually they just completely take over, where you can't have traditional Chad, Tom Cruise style heroes. You have to have the Will Smiths of the world. So that's, anyways, but on Independence Day particularly, I was thinking about how the aliens in this film were portrayed, right? And they're portrayed with like all of these tentacles, which I think is a good analogy, because I've often said that Jews are alien vampires. Both in those characteristics, what I mean by that is, obviously they are an alien people. They are not from our civilization. They have alien interests. They're interested in another people, in another nation, in another faith, in alien cultures in general. They speak alien languages. Now, they may try to assimilate and shapeshift into whatever host nation is naive enough for them to allow them to live amongst them. But if you remember in Independence Day, how it could use that guy's voice to talk in English, doesn't change the fact that he's an alien. Doesn't change the fact that they spread their tentacles across the entire civilization murderously. So, aliens, and then vampires, obviously, this is actually much deeper in that if you look into, especially Eastern European history, the characterization of vampires being scared of crosses, draining the blood from life, from people in order to sustain themselves, being a parasitic people, vampiric. There's always a tie to Eastern Europe, Khazar. So, stalking around in the dark. I think we can all understand why I might say Jews are alien vampires. Anyway, I've been thinking about Independence Day in relation to the identity of this nation, having to reclaim it for that historical identity, a Christian European nation. And I wanted to talk through today, spend a little bit of time on the racial subject. I haven't talked much about that in the last couple weeks. It's been pretty heavy on the Israel, Iran. Some people say we're already in World War III. And so I've been not concentrating so much on the race stuff. Oftentimes I allude to it, make a comment or two about how obviously America needs to be a majority white country run by white people, etc. But I haven't really talked much in depth about that. And so it kind of got me thinking last night. I was watching the interview with Nick and Dinesh D'Souza. And Dinesh is a conservative political commentator, has been for 20 plus years. And he is one of those people who believes in the Con Inc. mantra that America should be a colorblind meritocracy to give any global citizen the privilege of the American dream, which is so long as you're willing to come here and work hard, obey our laws, respect the Constitution, then America should be welcoming and open arms for you. But I've obviously spoken many times that that can't possibly be true, because even if you're a hardworking individual, if you are a Satanist, or if you have a disrespect or historical grievances toward Europa, America, various countries in Europe, then that's not in alignment with the priorities of our nation. I don't care how intelligent and entrepreneurial you are. If you can create a good business and make money and obey the laws, that's all good and well, whatever. Go do that in your country. You're not entitled to enjoy the economic privileges of the Western European world just because you obey the law and work hard. If as I said, you don't respect the historical ethnic identity of the whichever European country you want to go live in, and say that, yes, they deserve to remain as the majority in this country. Yes, this country should be run exclusively by those people who built the nation. If you don't respect or believe that, then you should not have any privileges in living in our society. You are here as a self-interested individual, and you see this all the times with immigrants coming here legally and illegally. Just last year, immigrants sent $56 billion back to their original nations. So they come here, they work hard and obey the law. Do they reinvest in the American economy? No, they send it back to Mexico, wherever else in South America, wherever else in Asia. That's not the purpose of immigration. The purpose of immigration is to fulfill our country's needs. So on the racial subject, I want to talk about I got 4 things written down. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quick because it's hot in the car and I have a fun July 4th afternoon I need to transition into with my family, get home, get cleaned up, get ready to enjoy some barbecue, time in the pool, probably a nice cool alcoholic beverage, and then some fireworks this evening. So I got an awesome day lined up, but I did want to talk a little bit about the relation of Independence Day, respecting the identity of this country, and the racial situation. So first things I'll say are, because all of our attention has been drawn to this conflict, drawn to the relationship with Israel, it's becoming in vogue to talk about that a whole lot. That's a great thing. We need to do that. I'm not saying don't talk about that. What I am saying is that this conflict is not ending anytime soon. If you might recall, when we got drawn into Afghanistan, we thought we were going to go in, do some regime change, install a democracy, be in and out. 20 years later, we're still there, okay? We're all over the Middle East. And so you're very naive if you think that, okay, we dropped 6 bombs on their nuclear facilities, in and out, we're done. We didn't even accomplish the mission, by the way, of destroying their nuclear capabilities, not the material or the facilities. So we will inevitably be drawn back into more military operations, more financial aid, more co-sharing of intelligence, more defending Israel in the international courts. That's just not going to change. That's the reality of the situation. 4 years, by the way. Like, this isn't something that, even if Iran loses this current battle, not the war, but the current battle, do you think the Middle East is just going to wave their hands and say, okay, I guess it's fine that Israel establishes hegemony over the entire Middle East and they get to dictate the economy and choose which leaders are allowed to run which societies, institute coups whenever they want? No, that's not going to happen. It's just so obvious that that's not going to happen, okay? No matter how powerful Israel becomes, there are billions of Arab Muslim people who will not tolerate Jewish tyranny forever, unending. They're going to rise up. They're going to continue to fight. Israel is not a powerful enough nation to ever handle that confrontation itself. They will continue to require America in particular, but also other European nations, to protect their fiefdom. And so knowing that this conflict is not over, it's not going to end in this decade, it's going to be ongoing so long as we are allies with Israel. That means that we cannot set aside the racial conversation in America and wait for that to resolve itself. We can't be distracted and say, okay, listen, I know that black people commit 50% of the crime, and I know that I know that America has now a 20% Hispanic population, majority of which have grievances against our ancestors, many of which believe we live on stolen land, many of which are extracting wealth from our economy and sending it back to nations they care more about than America. They have no respect for the cities that we have built. This is a major problem, and the foreign conflicts with Israel, Russia, China, all of that stuff, these are simultaneous issues. One can't be put on the back burner. And so focusing on the demographic of the country is a subject that we are responsible for continuing to beat the drum on. That's in relation to immigration policy, in relation to anti-white propaganda in our education system, in relation to hypocrisy in the legal code that says we're going to carve out special protections to defend Jews from anti-Semitism and hate speech laws to protect Hispanics and blacks. But you can shit on white people all day long, okay? We can't have that double standard continuing. And most importantly, when we talk about white identity, we know that the very clear goal here is to reestablish a model of freedom of association, segregation, where we have multicultural parts of the country for those who desire that, but also homogenous parts of the nation where white people can have communities of their own that are exclusively white. That is our end game. That is our objective. That is the only way to protect white people from literally going extinct. All right, we used to be like 30% of the world, and now I think we're 7% of the world. In every single one of our nations where we are the majority, we have a negative birth rate, and millions of immigrants are being forcefully shoved into each of those countries in real time, and they have been for decades. And so fixing all of this stuff is honestly more important than World War III. World War III is not going to destroy the world, okay? By the way, it's not going to be nukes flying all over, nuclear annihilation for everybody. It's going to be a continued economic drain. It's going to be American sons and daughters being shipped off to foreign places to die. There's going to be some terrorist attacks, but it's not going to be the end of America. What will be the end of America will be whites becoming a minority in the nation that they built. It'll be whites having their wealth and their accomplishments stolen and given to non-whites. That is the inevitable future. So if you get too heavily focused on World War III and Israel and all this other stuff, you are missing the forest through the trees. So we can't put race in that discussion aside. As a related subject, standing up to Israel so that they can stop interfering with our politics domestically and internationally and economically. We have to understand that the foreign people living amongst us now, the non-white people, including Muslims, blacks, many of them are on our side in being anti-Israel, especially the Muslims. Many blacks have become aware of the history of slavery. Many of them have seen how they keep black people on a leash, whether it's the hip-hop industry, the sports world, all of that. They understand how it works. If you're a black person, you want to go up there and talk about black pride and all this other stuff, then the Jewish record labels, the Jewish talent agencies, the Jewish sports agents, they'll give you big contracts. They'll make you a millionaire. But the moment you say something about the history of slavery, or the moment you pull a Kanye where you say, just speaking honestly, that all of these people who hold the contracts, which are modern day slavery, they're Jewish. Okay? They're Jewish. We can recognize that these other minority groups, we do have a current shared interest of doing something about Jewish influence, not just the foreign nation of Israel. We are all aware of Jewish influence and how it is affecting our country. Many black people understand that Jews use race as a source of division. Now, we have a little bit different of a perspective where a lot of blacks and other minorities say, hey, we're on to the Jews. We know they're sowing racial division, okay? So let's not let them divide us. Let's stand together and rebuke them. And that is a fair position to take, and that is kind of the necessary coalition that we have to agree to, but very important disclaimer. The black people and Muslims and Asians and Hispanics and everybody else who wants to join America first, to stand up to Jewish influence, they have to understand that this coalition that we form, it is a bargain where we get something, you get something, and there are terms at the end of the contract, so to speak. Once Jewish influence is resolved, once we have them purged, not harmed physically, anything like that, but once we have established that it is not right for people who don't worship Jesus Christ and who have an antipathy towards European culture, they can't run a Christian European nation. They cannot be at the highest levers of control in our society, not in the government, the media, the education, or the finance sectors. And so if in a world where we get to that objective, where we have removed that influence, reinstalled white Christian leaders, first and foremost, it has to be clear that that is the goal. The goal is not to remove these Jewish people who are in charge and replace them with some whites, some Hispanics, some blacks, some Muslims. No. We all want Jewish people out of power, but understanding the terms of the coalition agreement is that we are doing all of these things to remove Jewish power, to reinstall the historic identity of this nation that made it successful. And there are going to be, at the end of this phase, agreements, two of which that I want to talk through real quick. One would be all of you Arab Muslims who came here as refugees because Israel was dragging America into all these conflicts, blowing up your countries, killing your leaders. You came here as refugees and you came here with a lot of animosity towards both of us. Okay, we've resolved that now. We have withdrawn ourselves from those conflicts. We have neutralized Israel. We've done something about their nukes. Who knows what it might be. But either way, once we have fixed that problem, you guys have to go back home. We just fixed what you were most worried about. It's time for you to go back home. This is not a Muslim nation. It's not an Arab nation. Okay? If America came to hang out in the Middle East to do something about Israel, and then we did something about Israel, it would be a fair thing for those Arab Muslims to say, thank you for your help, appreciate it, but you can't stay here with a religion that we don't want spreading and evangelizing, nor do we want European culture installed here in Iran. And so that is the mutual agreement we must have with Muslims, is that you're here now. I understand that. We're not trying to deport you right now. We have a shared common interest in dealing with Israel's influence over not just America, but over your homeland as well. Once that interest is accomplished, you guys have to go back home. And so in the same way where we have to have an agreement and understanding with these Muslims who are in our country, who we share a common interest with right now, we have to have a common agreement with the blacks and Hispanics who are in our country that says, listen, I understand you guys have woken up. We understand that they are trying to install communism in our country. They are trying to destroy the First Amendment, Second Amendment. We understand that they're perverting our children. We understand all of these things that we know come from Jewish influence, that we want to stand up and repel this. Got it. However, here's the deal. A lot of you guys, especially the Hispanics, you're going to have to go back home, okay? You have nothing to do with the creation of this country. And black people, you have to understand that it is not immoral for white people to want to live amongst themselves. So we need to see millions of deportations of Hispanics, Asians, and other people who have come into our country in the recent decades. And the black people who have a historic presence in this country based on slavery, they've been here for 400 years. We're not going to kick them out. But we have to go back to a mutual understanding that white people have a different way of life than black people. And we have different opinions about the nature of slavery. Not saying that it's wrong or right. I'm not talking about the morality of slavery. I'm talking about how they perceive white people being historically unique in their implementation of slavery in North America, and that they want reparations, and that white people are especially worse than other people of the world when it comes to utilizing slavery, all this other nonsense. That's not going away just because we fixed the Jewish problem. And so we have to agree that segregation is not immoral. In fact, it reduces conflict. And so if we can fix the Jewish issues that are continually forcing multiculturalism on all of us, and by extension, forcing an unending conflict amongst these different groups who have different group interests, then we can get to a end point that says, all right, good work, everybody. Now we all go our separate ways. Those who want to stay intermixed, we can have a place with that, for that. But that's not everybody. That's not a lot of white people, okay? And you shouldn't be looking over the fence at them, waving your finger. This whole Martin Luther King thing, you should have learned by now who wrote his speeches. You should have learned by now that he was a communist. You should have learned by now that he was a fake pastor who didn't believe in Christ's death on the cross, that he was an adulterer. Okay, so all of this idolization of the civil rights movement and talking about how we should all come together and just live in peaceful harmony, that's not ever going to happen, because we have different group interests, we have different cultural preferences, we have different allegiances to different ancestors. We have to be okay with an agreement that says those who want to live together, by all means, go do so. Those who don't, that's completely fine too. You go do that over there. And so that's what I mean by this coalition that is formed for a temporary amount of time to do something about Jewish influence. We all have to understand what the end point of that should be in order to preserve the identity of America, the safety and the prosperity of America. It has to be a European country. That doesn't mean that zero non-European people can live here, but it does mean that in order for the historic identity to be maintained, it must be a majority white population run by white people. At a minimum, the spaces that are devoted to maintaining homogeneity for white people, obviously that has to be led by white people. And so those are my terms of agreement for folding black people, Hispanics, Muslims, whoever else into this temporary coalition of America First that says, we are here to make sure America doesn't crash and burn. There's a lot of different people involved in this effort. We know who the opposition is. It's Jewish influence. Part of that is our relationship with Israel. Once we fix all of that, we have to reorganize ourselves so that this continual multicultural conflict that the Jews installed does not continue. It would be like removing Jewish influence, but still having central reserve banking that is controlled by a foreign entity. That won't work. We have to be sovereign. We have to have control over our finances. It would be like removing Jewish influence, but allowing Russians or, I don't know, Kenyans or anybody else, Chinese, to run our media and our education. No, it has to be us. And by us, I mean the people who built the civilization. We have to run things. So those are my terms and conditions for all of my non-white people who follow me, for all of my non-Christians who follow me. That's what America First is currently aligned to. It is a big tent. We are going to need cooperation, not full agreement, but we need cooperation across many different groups. Realistically, it's going to be white people putting this on our back because that's just how it is. But we just need the other people to stop getting in the way, okay? Stop calling us racist. Stop calling us xenophobic. Stop talking about fucking slavery. Stop talking about colonization, stolen land. Shut the hell up. Get out of the way. We're trying to save America, okay? And once we do that, we will allow a portion of you, Hispanics, who have been here, maybe we'll figure it out. We'll figure out maybe 10-year amnesty, 20-year amnesty. I don't know what it might be. Obviously, assuming you came here legally, all of the illegals will have to go. All of those who have violated our country's laws have to go. All of those who are funneling money back to their original nations have to go. But that's the agreement, okay? Last thing here I'm going to say about the racial subject. This one is actually probably the most important, because there's a lot of people who, even on the conservative side, want to try to avoid the racial subject by saying that race is a social construct. They don't want to address the biological reality that race is real, and it's not just a matter of phenotypes, hair, eyes, skin color, height, muscularity. IQ is a component of the biological makeup of the different races. Even if they say, okay, all of those genetic attributes may be true, but this thing that you call race, that you categorize people into, well, that's a social construct. Well, here's a red pill. Did you know that everything that we verbalize out loud when we're having a conversation is a social construct? Did you know that everything that holds the nation together is a social construct? The idea of a democracy, if you're living in a theocracy, capitalism, free markets, economics in general, all of the principles are based on social contracts, social agreements, the individual words we use. America, the concept of a nation, having borders, establishing that this is a people, the people beyond those borders are a different group of people. The same is true with genetic makeup. It's not a matter of inferiority or superiority. It's a matter of making sure we can identify different things and talk productively about them. To identify a nation that currently exists as separate from another nation requires a social construct that says the people that live in this circle of territory are that nation, the people that live in this circle of territory are some other nation. The concept of borders, as I said, is a social understanding, an agreement. People will say gender and sexes are a social construct. Okay, sure. It doesn't matter. Now, from a biblical perspective, we obviously know that God defined man and woman and their attributes and their purpose and roles and everything. But still, when we talk about masculinity, femininity, those are clusters of ideas that people have agreed upon for hundreds, thousands of years to understand what it means when we refer to a man or a woman. The same is true for race. People will talk about, oh, well, this concept of race where you might connect all of the different European people together and call them white, connect all of the different Africans together and call them black, all of the Asians together and call that a unique race, so on and so forth. Well, that's a pretty modern, relatively speaking, perspective. It does, okay, who cares? So is the concept of football, but you know what football is, right? This idea that you can deconstruct any subject that you're talking about is essentially nihilism and relativism, where nothing has any meaning because you can tease it apart a million different ways to the point where nothing means anything anymore. Oh, that's just people running up and down a field tossing a ball back and forth. Okay, but we have to understand that the parameters of the type of field, the ways they're using the ball, the scoring system, all of that we create a word around so that when we refer to that set of activities and behaviors, we know what we're talking about. People groups are the same. That's what we call race. Democracy, as I said, the idea of having a republic, the idea of having a theocracy. These are all things that people thought about, people defined, and then that definition was socialized and people came to understand and agree, okay, in order for us to talk about this thing, we have to attribute a label to it so that we can have productive conversations. And so to talk about the interest of the growing of the Greco-Roman Empire into a global population, that's white people, okay? Black people living in America and Europe, we understand who they are. We're not confused. We know they came from sub-Saharan Africa. This isn't that complicated. It might be, the word race might be a social construct, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning and that it's not a productive utility in order for us to communicate. We have to have these things. It baffles me, honestly, that I have to explain the fact that even if you want to say race is a social construct, what isn't a social construct? It's an important red pill. It's very simple. It's actually, once laid out, very easy to understand that this idea that race being a modern social construct, therefore it's meaningless, the entire way we communicate with one another, the concept of language, when we agree on a word to mean a thing so that we can communicate productively, those are all social constructs. Every word in the English language, in Russian, in Japanese, in Spanish, in every language, every word that is chosen to mean something is agreed upon by society. Ergo, it is a social construct. Crazy that I have to explain that as if it means anything, that talking about the different biological groups of people who come from a certain ancestry is somehow meaningless because the word race was, relatively speaking, recently defined, recently came into the vernacular. Ignorance, complete ignorance. Anyways, you guys, it is sweltering in this car. The phone overheated once already. I had to turn it back on to knock out this last segment. But until next time, you guys, I hope you have an awesome July 4th with your family. Fill up on good food. Be safe. Don't drink and drive. Be responsible. Support the platform with the newly launched merch store. Get yourself the Zog Occupation apparel line. Get yourself something from the Save Europa apparel line. Highly recommend you guys get yourself some of the products from the anti-Zionist occupation supplement line. This is stuff you need to have anyways. As I said before in a previous vlog, I'm not asking you to shell out money suddenly that you weren't already spending. If you're in the gym, you're already buying creatine, pre-workout, multivitamins, fish oil. You need to take care of your sleep hygiene. That's why I have the Sleep Well products. And obviously you need clothes to wear. You need clothes to wear to the gym, but you also need them to be cozy at home, and you need to be prioritizing waking people up. And so I've created the apparel to do that, to awaken people to white genocide with the Save Europa line, to awaken people to the Zionist occupation of our government with the anti-Zog line here. You got everything you need, like literally need, your well-being, your clothes, but you also have everything you need to be armed in succeeding in our mission. It really does mean a lot to me when you guys support the platform. I'm going to use all of this to reinvest and multiply our message. So if you guys want to, whether it's picking up apparel or supplements, or subscribe to the monthly Substack where you get exclusive content, my documentaries, written blogs, etc., whatever fits your current budget the best, I would deeply appreciate it. Until next time, you guys, love you. Christ is King.